You ever have one of those mornings where everything feels just right, almost too right? That was today. The sun hit the glass facade of our boutique at agency just so, turning the entire lobby into a prism of gold. I stepped inside with a hot espresso in one hand, portfolio in the other, and a cocky little grin tucked behind my lips. Our agency, frame, was sleek, sharp, and for the first time, sitting on the cusp of something huge. Our pitch to Lysander Vodka was in an hour. If we landed them, we'd double our portfolio overnight. Not bad for a company that Derek and I started in a half-finished garage 6 years ago. Derek, my best friend since college. Business partner. The face guy. While I was busy sweating over storyboards and campaign hooks, he was out there working charm like it was a superpower. We were a duo, creativity and charisma, brains and bravado. It worked. God, did it work. And Rachel, my wife, was part of it, in her own quiet, clever way. She freelanced now, mostly content writing, brand copy. We'd throw her projects here and there. She had that mix of sharp intellect and dry wit that made even the dullest product feel electric. I used to call her my secret weapon. Lately, though, the weapon had gone a bit quiet. I brushed the thought away, refocusing on the slideshow loaded on the screen in the glass-walled conference room. Every transition timed to music, each image tested and retested until it hit just right. We were ready. I was ready. That's when I heard it, 2 soft knocks at the door. Marty, our night security guard, stood there with his usual lopsided grin, but his eyes, they were off. Heavy. Hey, he said, voice low. Sorry to bother you. Can I talk to you in private? My stomach did a small, nervous twist. Marty wasn't the type to bother people. He was quiet, loyal, solid. If he was here, something was wrong. I nodded and followed him down the hall to the dim security room. The air in there always smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old wires. He sat me in front of the monitors, tapped the keyboard, and brought up a clip labeled Conference RM3B, after hours. He didn't say a word. Just hit play. The footage was silent. Grainy. But there was no mistaking who was on screen. Rachel. And Derek. At first, I thought they were talking. Maybe laughing. But then she touched his arm. His hand went to her thigh. Then they kissed. It wasn't just a peck or a misread moment. It was deep. Familiar. Hungry. I watched, frozen. My pulse thudded in my ears like war drums. My skin went hot and cold all at once. The burn in my stomach crawled its way to my throat. Marty laid a hand on my shoulder. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, he murmured. But you're a good man. You didn't deserve to find out like this. I'm sorry. I nodded slowly, but the world had already gone mute around me. The screen froze on Derek cupping her face with a look I knew too well. That look? I used to get that from her. Now it belonged to him. I stood, mechanical, and walked back to my office. The world spun, but I kept moving. Pitch in 45. Right. Vodka clients don't care if your life just got lit on fire. Back in the conference room, Derek greeted me with that same easy grin. You ready to crush this? He asked, adjusting his cufflinks. I swallowed the bile in my throat and smiled. Born ready. He didn't know I knew. And somehow, that gave me the upper hand. At least for now. The clients filed in. Suits, polished nails, icy expressions. The pitch went off flawlessly. I hit every beat. They laughed in the right places, nodded in others. Derek laid the charm on thick, his hand grazing the blonde account leads back a second too long. Same tricks, different stage. And the whole time, the only thing I could hear in my head was that kiss. That kiss that cracked something deep inside me. After they left, Derek clapped me on the back. Fucking nailed it, man. I smiled. Let's hope they sign. He nodded, already texting someone. Probably Rachel. When I got back to my office, my phone buzzed. Rachel, dinner tonight? Thought we could unwind together. I stared at the screen. The gall. The absolute audacity. I didn't reply. I sat there, in my chair, the sun slipping behind the buildings, and realized something. Everything I thought I had, my marriage, my business, my best friend, was a fucking illusion. And yet, beneath the grief and rage, a spark. Not the kind that hurts. The kind that builds. I don't remember driving home. I know I left the office, that much is certain. The next thing I recall is sitting in my driveway, headlights casting long shadows across the garage door. The keys were still in the ignition, the engine humming low, like it was trying to comfort me. Rachel's car was already there. The irony didn't escape me, she beat me home, but I was the one racing toward the wreckage. I sat there a moment longer, hands on the wheel, trying to control my breathing. I could still see the way Derek's hand slid up her thigh in that video, the way her body leaned into his like it was second nature. How long had this been going on? How many nights had I rolled over in bed, thinking she was just tired, when in reality, she was exhausted from someone else? The house was warm when I walked in. The smell of takeout drifted in from the kitchen. She was setting 2 plates at the island, humming something under her breath. It almost felt normal. Until I spoke. I saw the video. You and Derek. In the conference room. She froze mid-reach, her back still to me. The room went dead silent. Then slowly, she turned. Her face went pale. A full 3 seconds passed before she spoke. I didn't mean for it to happen, she muttered. I was darting everywhere but mine. But, with Derek, I feel seen. I feel alive. I let out a low, bitter laugh. So that justifies sneaking around? Behind my back? With my best friend? You were always buried in work, she snapped suddenly, her voice rising. You stopped seeing me. You saw clients. You saw deadlines. You saw brand pitches. But you didn't see me anymore. No, I said, voice cold. You just didn't like what you saw. She flinched, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But instead, she folded her arms like she was defending a thesis paper. Like this was a debate she had prepared for. We were growing apart. Admit it. No, you were drifting, I replied. I was building something. For us. She shook her head. You were building for you. I just tagged along. And there it was. The truth, raw and resentful. I looked at her, really looked. Her new haircut, sharper than she ever wore it before. The little black blouse I didn't recognize. The necklace I did recognize, because I bought it 3 anniversaries ago. She wore it like armor, like some twisted homage to the marriage she was already stepping out of. I didn't say another word. I turned, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. She didn't follow me. She didn't even ask where I was going. I crashed on Nate's couch that night. Nate, our lead developer, was the kind of guy who kept whiskey in the freezer and never asked questions unless you offered answers. He handed me a beer and didn't push. That's why I went to him. But even with a roof over my head and silence to settle into, I couldn't sleep. All I could see was Derek's smug smile during the pitch meeting. The way he bumped shoulders with me like nothing had changed. The nerve. The fucking audacity to sit beside me, to clink glasses with clients, while knowing exactly what he'd done. And now what? Keep pretending? Go back to the office and play house in a broken agency? The part that made me sick was realizing how much I loved that place. The walls, the brainstorm sessions, the espresso machine Rachel picked out. It was my home in ways our house hadn't been for a long time. And they had tainted it. But here's the thing. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a brawler. I don't burn things or key cars. I create. So while the hurt sat inside me like hot stone, another part of me started thinking like an ad man. A story. A theme. A campaign. The kind that punches you in the chest and makes you remember it. I started scribbling on Nate's whiteboard at 2 a.m. ideas. Slogans. Taglines. Concepts that danced the line between satire and raw honesty. There was pain in every line. But there was power too. And when the sun finally crept over the city, bathing everything in gold like it had the morning before, I stood there barefoot, marker in hand, staring at what I had just written across his wall in giant capital letters. Homewreckers, for the man who destroys everything. Especially friendships. It hit me like a jolt of caffeine. This wasn't just a breakdown. It was a pitch. Monday morning felt colder than usual. I stood by the espresso machine watching the creamer rise, listening to the soft mechanical hiss like it was the only thing anchoring me to the moment. The office was quiet, too quiet. Derek wouldn't be in until 10. He liked his post-victory hangover sleep-ins. And Rachel? We hadn't spoken since the night I walked out. No texts. No apologies. Nothing. Which suited me just fine. I needed the silence. I needed time to think. And more than anything, I needed control. I stared at the half-scribbled whiteboard in my office. Ideas were everywhere. Broken headlines. Sarcastic slogans. Some of it too angry to ever see the light of day. But one stood out, circled 3 times in red. Homewreckers. For the man who ruins everything, especially friendships. It was petty. Brutal. Brilliant. And the best part? Derek wouldn't even see it coming. Not at first. I was still turning the idea over in my head when I heard heels clicking down the hallway. Not stilettos too sharp for that. Boots maybe. Confident, quick steps. I looked up, and there she was. Vanessa, Derek's wife. Dressed in a long camel coat, sunglasses still on, phone in one hand. Elegant as always, but there was a slight edge in her expression, something frustrated. She didn't expect to see me. She paused when our eyes met. "Oh," she said, slipping the sunglasses into her purse. "Didn't think anyone would be in this early. Client calls wait for no man," I said with a wry smile. "Or woman, apparently." She offered a faint grin and waved her hand toward the creative lounge. "I just came to grab my bag. Left it here the other day when I helped Derek reorganize the meeting room. I've asked him 3 times to bring it home, but he forgot," I finished for her. She rolled her eyes. "Of course he did. God forbid the great Derek Hartley remembers something that isn't directly tied to his reflection." I chuckled, and she turned, walking to the conference room. I watched her disappear through the glass door, her silhouette framed against the same space where, just days ago, my wife was tangled with her husband. The irony settled into my gut like a hot stone. She didn't know. Not yet. I stared at the monitor on my desk. The footage was still pulled up, paused on a frame where Derek's hand was on Rachel's thigh, his mouth just barely brushing hers. The look on their faces, intimate, practiced, familiar. And suddenly, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood and walked down the hallway, the rubber soles of my sneakers whispering across the hardwood. Vanessa was just zipping the small black leather bag shut, her hair falling across her cheek as she bent forward. She straightened as I entered. "You should see something." Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "What kind of something?" I didn't answer. Just turned and walked back to my office. To her credit, she followed. The air felt thick as I hit play on the monitor. I didn't speak while the video ran. Just let it play in silence, just like it had for me. Vanessa stood beside me, arms crossed, her bag dangling forgotten from her shoulder. It didn't take long. 30 seconds in, her hand slowly lifted to her mouth. She didn't gasp, didn't cry. She just watched. Expression unreadable. I paused the video when it ended and sat back in my chair. "I'm sorry," I said, though my voice was colder than I expected. "I didn't plan to show you that. Not like this. But seeing you here, I don't know. Maybe I just wanted Derek to feel what it's like when your world shifts underneath you." Vanessa said nothing at first. She walked slowly to the window and stared out at the city skyline. Her breath fogged the glass slightly. "When was this?" she asked finally. "Last Thursday. After hours. Caught on the conference room feed. Marty showed me." She nodded slowly, biting the inside of her cheek. "I knew something was wrong," she murmured. "He's been acting smug. Not guilty. Smug. That's what pissed me off." She turned, fixing her gaze on me. "Thank you for showing me. I'm not sure I did it for the right reasons." She walked to the chair across from me, sitting with eerie calm. "It doesn't matter. The truth's the truth. And now I know who I'm actually married to." There was a beat of silence between us. Then she smirked, just a little. "So, what are you going to do?" I hesitated. "I've been thinking of turning this into a campaign." Her eyebrow arched. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack." I turned the monitor toward her and opened a mood board. Concepts. Headlines. One read, "Cheat the ODDS. Get caught anyway." Another was a fake fragrance ad labeled, "Infidelity, for men who mistake confidence for character." Vanessa leaned forward, her lips slowly curling. "That's clever," she whispered. "Cruel, but clever." I thought so. She looked at me then, really looked, and nodded. "Let me help you. You don't have to get involved in this." "I want to," she said firmly. "For myself. For some closure. For the catharsis. Hell, maybe even for the art of it. Interior design can only scratch so many itches." I smiled, the first genuine one in days. "All right," I said. "Let's build something unforgettable." And just like that, we weren't just broken spouses anymore. We were collaborators. It started small. A concept here. A graphic there. We called it Project K, short for Karma, but no one else knew that. Officially, it was a fictional ad campaign meant to flex our creative muscles between client work. That's how I pitched it to the team. Internal project. No client. No rules. Just raw creativity. In reality, it was the first controlled burn of a carefully crafted wildfire. And it all started with a single headline, splashed across a mock billboard I displayed during our Monday creative huddle. "Homewreckers. For the man who ruins everything, especially friendships." Everyone laughed. Well, almost everyone. Derek leaned back in his chair with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Bold," he said, his voice light but clipped. "Bit edgy, don't you think?" "That's the point," I replied with a shrug. "Satire sells." The art department loved it. They went feral. We rolled out mock-ups, magazine spreads, fake fragrance ads, social media carousels. One read, "Infidelity, the scent of secrets." Another had a brooding male model staring into the mirror with the tagline, "Some men just can't keep it in their pants," or in their circle of trust. Each one landed like a whispered jab, but none of them had his name. No direct call-out. Nothing traceable. And yet, he knew. You could see it in the way his shoulders tensed when people laughed, or how he tried to steer the conversation toward real clients. He even threw out a few passive-aggressive comments in front of the interns. "I mean, it's cute," he said once, fake smiling at one of the junior designers. "But does it really do anything?" "Actually," I cut in, "it does exactly what it's supposed to. It hits." Outside the office, things shifted too. Vanessa and I kept our meetings quiet, late nights after the team cleared out. She'd bring wine sometimes. Mood boards. One night, she came in wearing this simple white blouse tucked into high-waisted jeans. No makeup, just her usual self. And she looked dangerous, but in a clean, calculated way. Like someone who'd stopped crying and started scheming. "We should push it further," she said, sliding her tablet across my desk. "Make it feel like a real brand." She'd designed mock packaging, cologne bottles, a fake product page with 5-star reviews from loyal backstabbers. I grinned. "God, that's good." She looked at me, her expression unreadable for a moment. "You sure you're okay doing this? It's not just catharsis. You're playing with fire." "I started the fire," I said quietly. "I may as well enjoy the warmth." Then came the moment of escalation. A local ad publication was doing a feature on experimental campaigns from boutique agencies. We submitted homewreckers under this satirical creative umbrella, fully fictional, zero risk. Except it didn't stay small. The editor loved it. "Brilliant, subversive, painfully relatable," she wrote. "A daring concept about modern betrayal." The piece ran on Thursday. By Friday morning, the post had over 100 shares on LinkedIn. By Friday afternoon, 3 clients emailed us about how fresh and emotionally raw the concept felt. Even one therapist in the comments section offered her thoughts. And Derek? He panicked. He barged into my office around 5 p.m., looking like someone had pissed in his organic protein shake. "Is this about me?" he asked bluntly, waving his phone with the article pulled up. I didn't even flinch. "Should it be?" He stared at me, jaw tight. "It feels personal." "It's satire," I said, sipping my coffee. "Unless you see yourself in it." He laughed, but it was hollow. "You know what, man? I just think we should focus on paying clients. And I think we should focus on honesty," I shot back. "If it makes people uncomfortable, it probably means we're doing something right." We stood there, locked in silence. He didn't say anything else. Just turned and left. That night, Vanessa and I sat in the lounge of the agency with nothing but jazz in the background and low lighting from the Edison bulbs. She poured wine into our glasses, something red and expensive she'd brought herself. "To truth in packaging," she said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers. "And to creative assassinations." We laughed, but it wasn't just bitter anymore. There was a strange lightness creeping in. And when she reached across the table, brushing her fingers over the back of my hand, there was a pause in the air. The kind that stretches just long enough to wonder if it means something. But nothing happened. Not yet. We were still in the blueprint stage, laying foundations, designing something precise. Because this wasn't just about revenge. This was a campaign. And we were just getting started. The apartment felt like a crime scene. Not in the literal sense. There were no broken windows, no overturned furniture. But everything carried a trace of Rachel. Her touch, her scent, her curated chaos. It was in the stack of half-read magazines on the coffee table, the throw blanket she used to cocoon herself in on Sunday mornings, the faint echo of her laughter that still clung to the walls like smoke. I had only grabbed the essentials when I left that night. Now, returning to this space on my own terms, it felt sterile and too quiet. Like someone else's life paused mid-scene. Vanessa noticed it the moment she walked in. She stood just inside the doorway, arms folded, her eyes scanning the place. "You haven't moved a thing," she said softly. I shrugged. "Been a little busy launching a campaign to emotionally annihilate my business partner." She smirked, but didn't look away from the room. "It's not just about revenge, is it?" I exhaled. "No, not anymore." She walked slowly through the space, trailing a finger across the back of the couch, glancing at the bookshelf filled with Rachel's paperbacks and old photography books. This place still looks like you're waiting for her to come back. I'm not, I said. But I guess part of me hasn't figured out how to evict her ghost. Vanessa turned to me. Then let me help. Help how? I'm an interior designer, she said, stepping closer. I don't just make things pretty. I help people reclaim space. Rewrite it. Heal through it. I hesitated, glancing around. And what if this place doesn't deserve healing? She tilted her head. Then we tear it down and start from the studs. She started coming over after hours. At first it was just measurements and sketches, color swatches spread across my coffee table. But soon, it became more than that. She brought over books on minimalist design, Scandinavian influence, and architectural psychology. She moved like she belonged here, not invading, just fitting. One evening, she stood in the bedroom doorway, eyes narrowed. This room has way too much gray, she muttered. It's like sleeping inside a depression. That's because it was designed during one, I said, leaning on the doorframe. She glanced at me, smiling. Mind if I experiment? Be my guest. The next time I came home, the bedding was gone, the walls had a fresh coat of warm cream, and my nightstand, once cluttered with old receipts and broken chargers, held a small vase with a single white lily. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. We didn't talk much about Derek or Rachel those nights. That was the unspoken rule. The campaign ran in the background. Homewreckers had picked up more attention, even catching the eye of a few podcast hosts who invited us on for interviews. The agency buzzed with energy. But inside these walls, it was quiet. Intentional. Safe. One night, I cooked dinner badly, and she stayed late. We sat on the floor drinking wine, backs against the newly reupholstered couch she'd had delivered earlier that day. She tucked her knees beneath her, her oversized sweater slipping off one shoulder as she laughed at some terrible joke I made. God, she said between sips, I forgot what this feels like. What? Just comfort. Someone who actually listens. She looked at me for a moment, and it was different this time. No tension. No agenda. Just stillness. Her eyes lingered on mine. Can I ask you something? Of course. If Rachel walked through that door right now, what would you say to her? I leaned my head back against the wall and let the question hang for a moment. I'd ask her if it was worth it. If trading a marriage for a couple stolen moments felt like freedom, or just regret with a prettier face. Vanessa nodded slowly. I'd ask Derek why he never saw me, even when I was right there. Silence settled between us again, but not awkwardly. It felt honest. We didn't touch that night. We didn't need to. But there was something building in the air between us, measured and slow, not just about desire, but something more dangerous, trust. The next day, I walked into the office to find Derek standing at the espresso machine, watching one of our mock homewreckers reels loop on his phone. He didn't speak at first, just looked at me with something simmering beneath the surface, paranoia, maybe, or guilt. You really think this is funny? He finally asked. Depends on your definition of humor, I said. Is satire supposed to make you squirm? He scoffed and set the phone down a little too hard. It's not professional, man. But it's honest, I said. And sometimes the best creative comes from what's real. I saw the twitch in his jaw before he turned and walked out of the room. That night, Vanessa texted me. Vanessa. Working late on a layout. Want to come by and weigh in? Me. Sure. Want me to bring wine? Vanessa. No. Just bring yourself. And maybe it was the way she said it. Or maybe it was the fact that for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a place to be that wasn't haunted by betrayal. But as I stood outside her door, hand raised to knock, I wasn't thinking about Derek or Rachel anymore. I was thinking about her. It started with a meme. One of the interns, Maya, sharp as hell and chronically online, took one of our satirical ad mock-ups and posted it to our agency's Instagram story with the caption, "When your best man becomes the worst man." It was a shot from our infidelity fragrance series, a cologne bottle shattered on a hardwood floor, petals from a torn bouquet strewn around it. The tagline read, "Because betrayal shouldn't smell this good." It was clever, dark, visually perfect. It was never supposed to leave the walls of our agency. But by the next morning, the post had over 12,000 shares on Twitter. Reddit caught wind. A niche advertising blog picked it up and called it a masterclass in heartbreak branding. And then it really exploded. Suddenly, we were the conversation. The ad was reposted with captions like, "I don't know who hurt the creatives behind this campaign, but I hope they're okay. Imagine cheating and seeing this on your timeline. This isn't an ad. This is a confession." The comment sections were brutal. And Derek? He walked into the office late that morning wearing sunglasses, indoors, trying to pretend nothing had changed. But even the receptionist looked at him differently. "Morning," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. He didn't stop by my office. Didn't text. Didn't bring up the post. Which told me everything I needed to know. He knew. And it was eating him alive. Meanwhile, the agency buzzed like we'd just launched Nike's next billion-dollar campaign. Our creative team was fired up. Clients were asking if they could get a little bit of that bold energy, and I found myself doing 3 interviews in 2 days with podcasts I'd never even heard of. And through it all, Vanessa and I kept meeting. After hours. In my apartment. At hers. It started with creative strategy and wine. But it wasn't about the campaign anymore. One night, she showed up without her laptop. Just a small bottle of red wine, a blanket, and that half-smile that had begun curling my insides in ways I wasn't ready to admit. "Tonight," she said, setting the wine on the counter, "we don't talk about them. Or the agency. Just us." I nodded, tension easing from my shoulders. "Deal." We sat on the couch, newly reupholstered. "Thank you, Vanessa," legs tucked under us like teenagers. No music, no distractions. Just conversation. Unfiltered. Unrushed. We talked about the people we used to be. I told her how I used to sneak into the art building on campus just to spray paint mock billboards on old canvas because I didn't have the guts to submit to the university exhibit. She laughed, then confessed how she once tried to become a sculptor until her professor said her work was too refined and lacked chaos. "That's what made me become a designer," she said, sipping from her glass. "Chaos needs walls. I build the walls." I looked at her. I soughed. "You build a lot more than that." We didn't kiss that night. But when she left, later than either of us intended, she lingered in the doorway. Her voice dropped. "You're not just getting revenge, you know." I tilted my head. "What am I getting?" Her eyes held mine. "Clarity. And maybe something better." The next day, the real punch landed. Derek lost a client. Lysander Vodka, the very brand we had pitched together, the one that put our agency on the map, pulled their upcoming media campaign. "Too much noise around your branding," they said in their email. "Some of our partners are uncomfortable with the tone of your recent content. It's brilliant, don't get us wrong, but a little too raw for us." Derek lost it. He stormed into my office, red-faced and shaking. "This is your fault." I didn't even flinch. "How do you figure? You lit this fire. You made it personal. You think I don't know what all of this is about?" "Careful," I said, voice steady. "You wouldn't want to admit anything out loud." His nostrils flared. "I built this agency with you. I brought in that client. You also brought something else into my life," I said calmly. "I just chose to turn it into art." His eyes darted to the whiteboard behind me where another ad concept was sketched out. A wedding ring twisted into a question mark. Tagline. "Commitment issues, now available in human form." Derek scoffed. "You're a fucking joke. And you're a man who can't handle being the punchline," I replied. "So maybe step out of the spotlight." He turned on his heel and slammed the door on his way out. I exhaled slowly. The room was quiet again. And for once, I didn't feel the burn in my chest. I felt weightless. That night, Vanessa texted me. "Vanessa." I saw the tweet. The one with the shattered cologne bottle. "You okay?" Me. "I'm better than okay. For the first time, I feel like the story I'm telling is mine." Vanessa. "Come over." Me. "Now?" Vanessa. "Now." Her apartment was dimly lit, filled with soft shadows and eucalyptus in the air. She met me at the door barefoot, wearing a loose black t-shirt and nothing else. Her hair was down, messy and perfect, and when she stepped aside to let me in, her hand brushed mine. The door clicked shut behind us. No words. We didn't need them. She kissed me, slow, deliberate, not a collision but a question, and I answered by pulling her against me, tasting the soft surrender of someone who wasn't trying to hide pain but transform it. Clothes fell in a trail toward the bedroom. There was no urgency, no guilt, just heat. Real, honest, earned heat. It wasn't a rebound. It wasn't revenge. It was two people rising from the same fire. Together. Derek always used to glide. That was the word for it. Glide. Through rooms. Through deals. Through conversations. Nothing stuck to him. Criticism, deadlines, even guilt. He had this magnetic polish, a kind of boyish arrogance that somehow passed as charm. But that version of Derek? He was slipping, and everyone could see it. It started with the smallest things. He started showing up late, like really late. His once perfect wardrobe was wrinkled, his grooming inconsistent. his jokes falling flat in client meetings. His aura of control had been replaced by something raw and defensive. But what really cracked him open was the second wave of the Homewreckers campaign. One of the new interns, Olivia, designed an ad using AI renderings that showed a slick, good-looking man photoshopped into dozens of scenarios. Sitting at a wedding table, next to his best friend's wife, delivering a best man speech, captioned "This toast aged poorly," standing at a mirror with lipstick on his collar. The tagline? "Some men ruin their marriages. Others ruin yours." It was brutal. Too brutal. And Derek knew. He barged into the creative bullpen like a man on fire, holding his phone up, veins showing in his neck. "What the fuck is this?" The entire team went silent. He was staring directly at Olivia, who looked like a deer in headlights. She stammered. I thought it was just part of the campaign." "It is," I said from the doorway. "And it's brilliant." He spun to me. "You're letting this happen?" "I'm encouraging it." The entire room froze. His jaw flexed. "This is about me, isn't it?" I took a step forward, calm, steady. "If it feels that way, maybe ask yourself why." The silence dragged like a slow knife. The interns exchanged looks. Even the junior creatives, people who once worshipped Derek, started to shift in their seats. The invincible co-founder was bleeding. He tried to fight back, of course. He pitched his own campaign the next day, called it raw realness. Something about masculinity redefined and emotional edge. It was tone-deaf and sloppy. The pitch deck was all surface, no soul. Even the fonts were a mess. It flopped in the first client meeting. Vanessa, who had come by to pick up some fabric samples, caught the end of it. She stood in the back of the room, arms folded, lips tight. After the meeting, as the clients filed out with polite excuses, Derek tried to laugh it off. "They just didn't get it," he said to no one in particular. Vanessa stepped forward. "No, they got it," she said flatly. "They just saw right through it." She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked straight to me. "Dinner?" she asked. "Yours or mine?" "Yours." We left together. Derek watched us go, and something in his expression cracked, something deep, something real. The following week, Rachel left him. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming. No scene. She showed up at the agency to talk. Her makeup was done like she had something to prove, but her eyes were tired. Derek pulled her into a glass-walled office to hash it out. The blinds weren't drawn. They forgot people could see. I didn't mean to watch, but I did. I saw the moment Rachel pointed at him, sharply, deliberately. The way her lips moved in clipped syllables. The way he slumped in his chair, hands open, mouth working but saying nothing of value. Then she stood, walked out, didn't even glance in my direction. She didn't have to. The message was clear. This was a mistake. Derek didn't leave the office that night until almost 10. Alone. Vanessa and I didn't talk about it over dinner. Not at first. She was curled up on my couch, barefoot, her wine glass on the coffee table. The lights were dim, the room warm. My apartment, our space now, had become a sanctuary. Eventually, she broke the silence. "So, she left him." I nodded. Saw it coming. "He probably thought she'd never leave," she said. "They always think they're irreplaceable." I looked at her. "Was there ever a part of you that?" "I don't know. Wanted him to come crawling back." She shook her head, slow and sure. "Not after seeing who he really is. Not after realizing what I deserve." She turned to face me, pulling her knees beneath her. "And what about you?" she asked. "Still feel like getting even?" I thought about it. About the campaign. The humiliation. The quiet satisfaction of watching Derek unravel under the pressure of his own decisions. Then I looked at her. The way she sat across from me, not just as an ally in revenge, but someone who saw me, who heard me, someone who stayed. "I think I got what I needed," I said. "Not because of what he lost, but because of what I found." She didn't smile. She leaned in. And this time, when she kissed me, it wasn't cautious or slow. It was real, deep, intentional. A closing of one chapter, and the start of something new. We didn't make a big announcement. There was no Instagram post, no hand-holding at work, no dramatic agency-wide kiss in the middle of the bullpen. But people knew. They could feel it. The difference in the way we moved around each other. How she laughed more now, lower, looser. How I started showing up to meetings with the kind of calm that comes when you've stopped carrying the weight of pretending. We weren't flaunting it, but we weren't hiding, either. The shift in energy around the agency was undeniable. The creative team, once quietly walking on eggshells during the Derek and Rachel chapter, had found a rhythm again. Jokes flew faster. Ideas came easier. People stayed later, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Vanessa had a lot to do with that. After Derek's raw realness debacle tanked, she offered to help redesign the office. "I want to get the dead energy," she'd said, sketching ideas on a napkin over ramen one night. "Tear out the cheap pseudo-startup look and give it some real identity." We started calling it Project Phoenix because that's what it was. A rebirth. The first thing to go was the glass conference room where Derek and Rachel had tangled in silence. Vanessa had it ripped out entirely. In its place, she designed a creative common space, sunlight pouring in from two directions, lined with wall-length whiteboards, vibrant prints, and custom shelving filled with art books and tactile props. "Creativity needs friction," she said, watching the carpenters work. "But it doesn't need ghosts." We moved Derek's office to the back corner. Politely. Quietly. No one said a word. Even he didn't fight it. He still showed up. Still contributed. But he no longer led. The soul of the agency had shifted, and it was clear who had stepped into the light. One Thursday afternoon, I caught Nate in the kitchen stirring sugar into his third coffee of the day. He glanced over his shoulder, a grin playing at his mouth. "You're different," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Lighter. Happier. Like you finally took a breath after holding it for 3 years." I laughed, shaking my head. "Didn't realize I was that obvious." "You were like a ghost after hours for a while," he said. "Now you're a damn campfire." That stuck with me. A campfire. Warm. Alive. Still capable of burning if needed. Vanessa stayed over more and more. By now, her toothbrush had claimed its spot next to mine. A bottle of her perfume lived in my bathroom. She started storing a few design tools and fabric samples in the closet, not because she needed to, but because, without saying it, we both knew. This was home. One night, after a long day of construction meetings and brand pitches, we found ourselves curled up on the couch, legs tangled, a record playing softly in the background. She traced a finger along my forearm, absent-mindedly. "I was thinking," she murmured, "about expanding my studio. I want to partner with more creative agencies. Designers, storytellers, people who see the world the way I do." I looked down at her. "That's not just thinking. That's planning." She smiled. "I guess it is. Are you offering a partnership?" I teased. "I'm offering a life," she said. And just like that, the air in the room shifted. Not in that thunderclap, movie-style moment, but in a quiet, knowing way, like an anchor being lowered into calm water. We didn't need titles. Didn't need to define anything. We were just here. Healing. In sync. No longer acting out of pain, but out of something real. The first official event in our new space came a month later. We threw a relaunch party, part networking, part celebration, all transformation. Clients, friends, industry insiders. Finger food. Neon art. Vinyl spinning on an old-school turntable in the corner. The walls were covered in rotating screens showing past campaigns. Even homewreckers made an appearance, this time framed as experimental satire that sparked a creative revolution. People loved it. Some clapped me on the back. Others leaned in conspiratorially to ask, "That campaign, was it real?" I just smiled. Vanessa, in a black silk jumpsuit and low heels, moved through the crowd like a breeze with gravity. She was elegance without trying. When we finally met in the center of the room, glasses in hand, the spotlight caught us for a second, just enough time for me to lean close. "To surviving hell," I said. She grinned. "To designing something better." We clinked glasses. Derek was there, off to the side. Watching. He didn't approach. Didn't speak. Just faded further into the background, exactly where he belonged. It started with a blank canvas. Not metaphorically, literally. A stark whiteboard in the new brainstorming room, lit by the afternoon sun, waiting for something that mattered. We just wrapped a client pitch that morning, but I wasn't satisfied. Not creatively. Not personally. We'd rebuilt the agency. We'd exposed the rot. We crafted satire sharp enough to draw blood. But I didn't want to be defined by the revenge. I wanted to create something that healed. Something honest. That's when I started writing on the whiteboard. Second chances aren't given. They're designed. The sentence hung there, bold and simple. Vanessa walked in minutes later, pausing at the doorway. Her eyes scanned the board, then flicked to me. "That's good," she said softly. "Really good." I turned to her. "I'm thinking campaign. A real one. Not satire. Not irony. Just truth." She tilted her head. Truth about what? About what happens after the fallout. After the rage. The hurt. The humiliation. What you build with it. She stepped beside me, picked up a marker, and wrote underneath my line. Designed for those who refuse to stay broken. And just like that, the campaign had a heartbeat. We called it the Rebuild series. A multi-platform storytelling campaign about resilience. Real stories from real people about betrayal, divorce, heartbreak, and the life that comes after. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't cynical. It was raw and beautiful and painfully human. We filmed short-form interviews. Crafted billboards with real people's quotes. I lost the person I thought I needed and found the person I actually am. He walked out. I walked into my own life. She broke the vow. I broke the cycle. The centerpiece of the campaign? A video ad. Narrated by me. The script wasn't written by a team. I wrote it myself. It opened with slow-motion shots of cracked glass being swept into a dustpan, then cut to a man standing in an empty apartment, staring at blank walls. My voice came in. They tell you love is the foundation, but they never warn you what happens when someone takes a sledgehammer to it. They don't prepare you for silence that used to be laughter, for the sin of a shirt that isn't yours, for the hollow click of keys unlocking a door you don't recognize anymore. Then it shifted, light slowly pouring through a window. But what if the fall wasn't the end? What if it was the beginning? Images of redesign, painting, clearing old spaces, building new ones. Slow cuts of joy returning, one room, one smile at a time. Some of us weren't just cheated on. We were robbed of ourselves. But the beautiful thing about being broken? You get to rebuild on your own terms. The final frame showed a man standing in front of a newly painted wall, a coffee mug in hand, peace on his face. And the tagline faded in. Designed for more. We submitted the campaign to a local creative awards show, small, mostly community-driven, but respected. And it won. Not just in the best storytelling category, but in audience impact. When they called my name, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt ready. The lights were hot on my face as I stepped up to the stage. Applause echoed through the room. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't falter. I looked out over the crowd and saw so many familiar faces, Nate, the team, clients, even some former ones. And in the second row, her eyes locked with mine. Vanessa. Composed, radiant, hers. I took a breath. This isn't really about an ad, I began. It's about what happens when everything you thought was secure cracks. I paused. The crowd leaned in. We talk about creativity like it's a magic trick, like it's born out of whimsy. But the truth is, some of the most powerful work comes from pain, from loss, from starting over with nothing but raw material and your own damn hands. I scanned the room again. My voice dropped just slightly. I built this campaign because I was broken. And I thought if I told that story honestly, maybe someone else who's been there, is there, might realize they aren't alone, that they don't have to stay in that place. I turned to the side and extended a hand. And I didn't build it alone. Vanessa joined me on stage, her fingers sliding effortlessly into mine. She didn't need a mic. Her presence said everything. She didn't just help me rebuild, I said. She helped me reimagine. We held the award together as the audience clapped. But the real reward wasn't the applause. It was the look in her eyes, and the quiet, anchored feeling of knowing. This time, I had designed my life. The mountains were quiet in a way the city never could be. Not the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring, but the kind that wraps around your shoulders like a thick wool blanket. Comforting, clean, honest. We'd driven upstate on a Friday afternoon, Vanessa and I, her playlist humming through the speakers, a thermos of black coffee between us. The air outside turned colder with each mile, windows misting up as the pine trees thickened and snow began to dot the shoulders of the road. I hadn't been away like this in years. Not really. But Vanessa didn't just bring stillness with her. She made it possible. We reached the cabin just before sunset. It wasn't extravagant, one of those modern wood and glass places tucked at the edge of a cliff, where the only thing separating you from the world was air and glass. Inside, the fireplace was already stacked, and she lit it while I unpacked. She brought a thick sketchbook, a roll of tracing paper, and a bottle of dark red wine that she didn't even wait to uncork. We didn't turn on the TV. We didn't need noise. We had each other. That night, after dinner, just pasta and warm bread, we sat on the couch wrapped in one big wool throw. She was curled beside me, bare legs against my jeans, her fingers idly tracing a circle against my knee. You ever think, she said softly, that this whole thing had to happen? I looked at her, my arms slung across her shoulders. What? The affair? The fallout? She nodded, not looking away. I used to think it was just destruction, I said. But it wasn't. It was demolition. Making space for something better. Her eyes sparkled a little in the firelight. You think this is better? I didn't even hesitate. This is real, I said. She leaned in, kissed me slow. No urgency, just the warmth of someone who knew you, all the way through. It was the kind of kiss that said we survived, not just the betrayal, but the people we used to be. The next morning, snow blanketed everything. The trees wore white jackets. The deck was coated in ice crystals. The mountains across the ridge looked like frozen waves. Vanessa stood barefoot on the rug, sipping coffee, wrapped in one of my flannels. She turned, smiling, hair messy, lips still puffy with sleep, and held out a thick roll of paper. I want to show you something, she said. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. What is it? She unrolled it on the table. A sketch. Pencil and charcoal. A house. Not the cabin. Not my apartment. Something new. Open floor plan. Skylights. Clean lines. Warm wood tones. Natural textures. A kitchen with wide counters. A reading nook. A double sink in the master bath. And across the top, in her delicate script. Home. Phase 1. I stared at it, heart knocking hard against my ribs. You drew this. She nodded. Last week. I didn't know if I'd show you. I didn't want to push anything. But this is what I see when I think of us. Not just healing. Living. Fully. I looked up at her. This isn't a design. This is a life. Exactly, she whispered. One we choose. Not one we inherit from someone else's mistakes. And suddenly I realized. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of falling again. Not of being vulnerable. Not even of being hurt. Because now, I knew what I was capable of surviving. And more than that, I knew who I was building with. We spent the rest of the weekend in that snow-wrapped cabin. We cooked slow breakfasts. Talked about future clients. Shared memories. She told me about her childhood sketching dollhouses, how her father once said, "You're not just drawing walls, you're imagining lives." She was right. That's what we were doing now. Imagining a life. A few weeks later, we filed paperwork to rebrand the agency. No more Hartley and Company. We renamed it Forge. Because we'd been broken. Then we made something new. And we weren't looking back.